Now, the Rabat Process, officially known as the Euro-Africa Dialogue on Migration and Development, is a collaborative platform established in 2006 to address migration and development issues between European and African countries, particularly those in North, West, and Central Africa. Now, in January 2025, Nigeria assumed the chairmanship of the Rabat Process, marking a significant step in its commitment to addressing migration challenges in collaboration with European and African nations. Now, this leadership role underscores Nigeria's dedication to advancing migration, governance, and also tackling issues related to irregular migration. Now, today, I'm joined by two distinguished guests. We have Professor Nentawe Yilwatda, first of all. He's the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and also Disaster Management. We also have joining us Jake Epelle. He's the founder and Chief Executive Officer, the Albino Foundation. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let me begin with Professor Yilwatda. Now, we know that Nigeria, has taken the lead in the Rabat Process. Now, as we prepare to take the lead from 2025 to 2026, what particular priorities do you think that we can or should pursue to address irregular migration and its root causes?
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me first congratulate Nigeria and also thank the other states for putting trust in Nigeria. I wish you were here yesterday and day before yesterday to hear the commentaries about Nigeria from the international community, the confidence they're building in the government of Nigeria and the people of Nigeria. And we presented our priority areas, and the key priority areas were driven by the major causes of migration in Africa. And the first we look at it was that most of the people moving out of Africa, especially Central, West, and North Africa, are mainly to target economic opportunities in the European Union. So we want to look at how we can create those equal opportunities in Nigeria here, or find alternative means of people working from Africa in Europe without even moving, but earning the same dollars and having the same comfort in Africa here. Secondly, we're looking at also the opportunities where you can have short-term jobs for people so that we can legally move to those places and then have those jobs and then return back to Nigeria even to Africa with equal opportunity and also their rights not violated. We're also looking at climate change, because a lot of the people who are involved in this migration, some of them is because of climate change issues. They are being displaced by either flooding or sometimes due to drought. And it's moving people out of, especially in part of northern African countries, the desert and the Sahel communities, a lot of competition for water, a lot of competition for grass by herders. And it has led to conflict within these zones and creating migration in different forms. And some of them look at those opportunities beyond Africa and they move beyond Africa. We're also looking at the possibility of opening, because the reason why people are even pushing for this is because there's need for us to discuss with Europe to open up more visa opportunities for Africans so that people can move with, through regular means. And that was very important for us. And then putting at the forefront of this is that over 90% of people who are involved in this illegal migration, they either are not schooled or they're not schooled beyond secondary school, which shows that deepening education and increasing the capacity of people to have independent skills will also reduce the issue of migration, because these people feel that if I go up there, I can even be a cleaner, or I can take any menial jobs, and then that will help us, help them to stay over there. But if we can have those equal opportunities, that's why I say that Europeans can come and invest in Africa. They can invest, in Africa so that they can create more opportunities here, and then they can stabilize the economies. So investment in Africa is one of the major driving forces that can also reduce the issue of migration. Then having peace in Africa, so that we must invest in peace and create political stability also in Africa, because in some places political instability, economic instability, and then conflict due to either insurgency or intercommunal crisis are part of the reasons why migration is taking place. So these are the things we are putting at the forefront as a country that we hope to tackle this forefront in discourses. And we are arranging the first one will be in May, which will tackle climate change, and its effect on migration. And we are bringing over 100 countries to participate in that one, not just the European African countries, but we're bringing over 100 countries beyond Africa to participate in looking at the issue of climate change and migration. And that's what bringing the cartoon process into Abuja for that purpose.
All right, Professor Yilwatda, thank you so much for the highlights of giving us the highlights of what happened during, the forum. You've actually touched on how both regions, that's EU and Africa, can leverage their unique strengths to create mutually beneficial opportunities. But just before we come to Jake, how do you think that, Nigeria, being the chairman of this process, can ensure that these particular efforts to curb irregular migration do not infringe on the human rights of the migrants?
That's the advantage we're having as a country, because there are a lot of strength that they're seeing in Nigeria, especially. We have a lot of agencies: the Human Rights Commission, the NAPTIP. We have the Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and we have also the Immigration Services and several other agencies of Nigeria that have been strengthened by different capacities in terms of data management, in terms of the human rights reporting process, in terms of mapping even the routes that people exit to them. And Nigeria has been able to do that convincingly. So if you look at Nigeria has mapped the states that most people migrate, and they've target orientation within those communities, target and mapping opportunity for people within those communities, and arresting them at the root cause. And Nigeria has done that effectively. So other African countries are learning from the process that Nigeria worked to reach that stage. And that's the reason why we also are advising and also are putting on the table these our own our learning curve before the African countries, so they can learn from us too.
Oh, okay. Sounds like a good enough plan. Now, let's come back to you, Jake. Now, speaking of the Rabat process, it aims to address migration and development issues between EU, Africa countries, but it's important to also assess its inclusivity concerning persons with disabilities. Now, do you believe that the Rabat process adequately addresses the needs of persons with disabilities, and what improvements would you suggest?
I think, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's pertinent to mention here that it appears to me that Nigeria went to this dialogue and summit with the best practice. I was privileged to make, I think, the very first intervention on the floor of the summit at the plenary session. And surprisingly, all the presenters, not one of them, mentioned anything about disability. So I took them to task and said, are they saying that there are no persons with disability one way or the other involved in irregular migration, or even the regular or the legal migration? And, all the presenters agreed that I think there's a missed opportunity on their part, that nothing about disability was mentioned in all of that. That gave me the opportunity to also in my second intervention, announced that, well, the whole country, all the countries in this conference today needs to learn from Nigeria. That Nigeria, as of today, has an inclusive policy that is in the works that would soon be approved. The process of both formulation and approval were totally inclusive. You know, we made meaningful contribution about challenges with persons with disability, whether it is in the destination or in the process of getting to their destination, or from the country of origin. You know, I remember vividly one of the, I think the lady either from the EU or one of these development partners did say that, well, the problem is that because, especially the irregular migration, that because of the rigorous process of those who embark on that journey, that oftentimes persons with disability are not in the company of those that are trying to use the irregular means. And I told her, you're wrong. And I proved her wrong by saying that, listen, there are two kinds of disability. There's what we call visible disability. That means it's physical. You can see it, you can touch it. You know, someone sitting on a wheelchair, you know, someone who is legally blind, you know, someone who has cerebral palsy or Down syndrome. Those are visible disability that you can see. But there are also invisible disability. For instance, I know that there's been this argument, which is not correct. Some people feel that albinism is not disability. Albinism is a disability. We do have invisible disability and also visible disability. One is our sight. I can see from a 10-meter distance. I will not recognize faces, and I'm talking about myself. And there is no glasses that can help us. That's one. Number two, if you go to CRP, the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, which is a United Nations document, it captured albinism as a disability, especially in advocating for reasonable accommodation. I'll give you one instance. It takes just 10 minutes for me to burn in the sun. 10 minutes. Anybody with albinism, a full-fledged person with albinism. Again, I don't want to go into the biology of albinism. Yeah. There are two kinds of albinism. There is ocular albinism, and there's oculocutaneous albinism. I am oculocutaneous albinism. That means I'm a full-fledged individual with albinism with features in the hair, eyes, and skin. And by the way, I always say this, that I'm very proud that I'm a person with albinism. I'm not asking for anything less. I thank God he made me who I am, you know. And for instance, to tell you why I say this, one of the reasons why you have me on this show is because you know that I have albinism. So what people think is a disadvantage is an advantage for me.
Absolutely, Jake.
Yes, yeah. And so it's important to underscore here that Nigeria is far ahead most countries, even most Western countries, in implementation of some of these policies. We still have our problems. We still have issues that the likes of the Honorable Minister is trying to solve, you know, and collectively and collaboratively, we will solve that problem.
Absolutely. Now let's quickly hear from the Honorable Minister himself on, you know, all that you have said, Jake. You definitely heard what Jake has said. Now, speaking of the CADI's action plan, you know, does it emphasize enhancing migration governance, you know, especially protecting vulnerable groups and also advancing the sustainable development across, you know, the Rabat Process region?
Yes, and it's the same thing we're discussing here. There's a nexus between development, peace, and migration. You cannot talk about migration without peace, and you cannot discuss migration without sustainable development. Most people who are, like we said, who are moving, they are looking for better working environments, better and sustainable development that are in these communities, and they feel these are better opportunities for them. And so we must invest as governments, not just federal government alone, not just state government alone, even local government, in providing sustainable development in rural communities. And I keep on saying that, especially in Nigeria here, most of these services domesticated in local government and state government. For example, sanitation, water, education, secondary and primary education, and even tertiary education, and health, quality of health, primary and secondary health services. These basic services are domesticated mostly in local government and state governments. And I think we need to begin to work, and that's why in this, coming back to Nigeria again, we want to domesticate this convention down to the state and local government. So they've prioritized investment in these areas, and so that they can also strengthen capacity building among the communities, open up opportunities, building markets, building and strengthening private sector participation, and providing the states with opportunity for them to invest in. These are areas that the state governments must also work with the federal government in collaboration to ensure that these are done to provide opportunity for young people.
Okay. Now, Minister, what about the reports of an impending importation of over 3,000 Nigerians from the U.S.? I would love for you, for clarity's sake, to tell us if this is actually true, if this report is true, and what your ministry is intending to do to facilitate, the reintegration and also address the potential socioeconomic impact on local communities.
We don't have any official memo to that effect, but we are preparing a response plan for it, because it happened before in Sudan. During the Sudan crisis, many Nigerians were displaced. They became refugees in Sudan. And the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs was able, along with other, they headed the response plan for that Sudan. And they worked out the safe and dignified return of Nigerians from Sudan. After even returning, they make sure that those people who are schooling were provided with alternative education opportunities in Nigerian universities. And those people that needed job were provided with skills for them to easily reintegrate back to their communities. And those who are doing commercial activities were also given the opportunity for them to integrate into market spaces in Nigeria. So the same thing will happen here. We've already set up a team as a response plan within the ministry, and we are working, in conjunction with other sister NDAs, so that you can provide a response plan in case it happens, because of watching videos of what's happening in Colombia and other neighboring countries that already, they've deported their citizens. So we're working, a sufficient response plan for this category of people. And we're not just working not by word of mouth alone, but we've already set up a response team already. And we're sure that if it happens, we will do our very best to ensure that the dignity, the safety, the human rights of Nigerians are not violated.
Absolutely. Now, let's come back to Jake. Now, Jake, you've heard that the minister said that, of course, vulnerable groups will definitely be included. Now, we also know that advocacy efforts, are essential to ensure that, migration policies, are inclusive of persons with disabilities, especially those with albinism as well. So can you tell us how the Albino Foundation is advocating for the inclusion of persons with disabilities, in national and international migration policies?
Well, we've had a change of name. I think I will start by putting that straight.
Please go ahead.
A change of name. Yes, we were referred to as TAF Africa.
TAF Africa.
Because we scaled up our intervention from just albinism to persons with disabilities. Secondly, I am part of the action on albinism at the UN level, and the UN came out forcefully to remove the term albino because it's a Latin word which means albust, extremely white. But then biologically it talks about the albinistic body. That means plants, rats, and everything, you know. So in order to separate human being from that category of creation, we are referred to as persons with albinism. So using the term albino is becoming derogatory. So we had to make a change of name. Now, to your question, we are not the only one. I won't claim that we are the only one. There are several other organizations that collectively and collaboratively we are working to push beyond rhetorics the issue of inclusion of persons with disability, whether it's in the electoral space, whether it is in the economic space, in the health, with access to health, education. You know, I'll tell you, talking about education, my organization was largely responsible for the first inclusive education policy in the country, which happened to be the second in the whole continent of Africa. We got funding and assisted the Ministry of Education, and we formulated that policy and pushed it to approval. The review of that policy has been done by my organization, and we have also gotten approval. And just to say to people who push for policies and you're getting discouraged that their policies are not implemented, please don't give up. Push after the policy formulation until the policy is implemented. And I can tell you here for free that Ministry of Education now have a budget for the implementation of the inclusive education policy. Not only do they have a budget, they've set up a working committee. I am the co-chair of that working committee.
Well, that's positive news.
Yes, and they are implementing inclusive education. Now, finally to the Honorable Minister, I am grateful to President Bola Tinubu for appointing Prof. You know, to be honest with you, not for anything, I'm not singing his praise, but I'm just telling you based on the work that I have seen. Now, first, just a week ago, he brought all the cluster heads of persons with disability and some advocates of persons with I'm talking about the community. Yeah. And we have agreed and we have formed a committee, I think it's less than 10 of 10. He's going to add other people from his ministry that would begin to work with him, advise him, work with him and see that not only are we told what he's going to do, we will be part of what he's going to do. That's the way to go. I mean, think about this. How many of, even his former predecessors, none of them will come on national television and begin to talk about what he wants to do. You know, Prof was very kind. Well, he's in government. Government is continuum. He was very kind to talk about his previous predecessors and all that. There is no comparison. What he's trying to do now cannot be compared to what they did then. You know, because I was very critical of his predecessors. You know, and I think Prof is being very kind. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no comparison. What he's laying out to do transparently and in the spirit of patriotism and love for the community of persons with disability cannot be compared with what his predecessors did. And I think with that, I can beat my chest to say we will get results.
Well, you've heard that, Minister. Jake has actually sung your praise, so, you know. All right, so now, still talking about this, we know that the United Nations and partners have actually appealed for $1.3 billion, to provide critical aid and services to 6 million people in need in northeast Nigeria. And there has also been a recent appeal for $910 million to address humanitarian crisis in same northeast Nigeria. Now, can you tell us how will these funds be utilized, to be able to mitigate some of these factors that contribute to forced displacement and migration?
Yes, thank you so much. Let me first thank OCHA, and the UN system as a whole for their work, and other international bodies, NGOs and INGOs, for their sacrifice, putting their life on the line to save Nigerians and provide livelihood for Nigerians also, and even the other donor countries who are providing this funding for Nigeria over years and working with Nigeria to ensure that we have safety within our communities. And let me also add what our military are doing in the Northeast, recovering more spaces, tackling insecurity in most communities. I was with the NSA and we were going through the maps of Nigeria before now and what it is now. 2 years ago, how the map of insecurity looked like, communities that were taken over by the insurgency, and the progress we're making right now. I was in Borno myself. I visited Borno State in November last year, ending of November last year. I visited Jere local government and Sifu local government. I went to communities that before now, you cannot access them. Moving even closer to the Sabisa forest, which I paid some visit to those communities. And I would penetrate right down to communities that were never seen before. But this is what I saw with my eyes. Schools were completely leveled. Communities were completely leveled. So I went to one village. The only thing I could see were some bricks that were left. They were concrete and built with iron rods that were left. They leveled down everything. Schools are leveled. Health centers were leveled. Courts were leveled, and most essential services were completely leveled. Even water tanks from boreholes, they removed the metals, removed so complete. That services are completely dilapidated and completely destroyed. Now, this funding that was raised is to tackle two major things. Apart from the effect of this insecurity in the Northeast, which the government has recovered most of the communities, we must rebuild. That's one. Two, there's this devastating effect of climate change, due to flooding in the Northeast and part of the Northwest, which it was on television. You saw what happened in Borno State. Communities were completely, overrun by flood.
By flood, yeah.
Livelihood were destroyed. People were in camps. It ran down to Bauchi. It ran down to Kano, part of Jigawa. It ran into Adamawa, into Taraba, into Plateau, into Benue. These were major flooding communities that they took place in this season. So this funding is to make sure that they provide basic food security for these communities. Because mark you, the farms that were overtaken by this flooding were not insured. There's no insurance for these farms by these poor smallholder farmers. The farms were not insured, no insurance for them, which means that their means of livelihood has completely been taken off them. So this funding is to provide, first, save them and rescue them from food insecurity. That's number one, and provide nutrition for their kids. Two, we intend to also look at education. How can we rescue and provide education back to this community that were completely destroyed? Build schools, employ teachers, provide essential learning, learning materials for these communities.
Okay.
Three, water and sanitation. And you can keep on going and going, build back the courts, build back essential services, build back markets, build back so that you can bring essential life and bring back the economy and get those communities again productive. And I think that's what OCHA is targeting by this $910 million that they are putting across for the international community to raise funds for us.
All right, Minister. Thank you so much for that. Now, just before we wrap up quickly in 1 minute, Jake, let's hear your final thoughts and also what your vision for the future concerning the inclusion of persons with disabilities in migration policies and practices, both in Nigeria and globally, is.
I think in a simple design, be inclusive. That means let persons with disability be part of the intervention project design, so that they don't give us what is not adaptable to our needs. The openness that I have seen with the Honorable Minister, hopefully the people around him will not frustrate that effort. He will continue to do that. But also what time will not allow us to talk about, which is the things that I have criticized the previous leadership of Humanitarian, is the lack of integrity of their data. And this Honorable Minister, with his experience, is making effort to clean up the National Social Register, which is a major problem. Once we get that right, and we know who is who, and people don't take advantage of the most vulnerable in terms of intervention, the moment we have the right data, intervention becomes very, very easy. And if time will allow you for
sadly time will not allow him
exactly to lay out the plans he has for data interrogation, integrity, and implementation. I think I can beat my chest to say we will get it right. And of course,
all right. Well, sadly, Jake, time is not on our side. We have to wrap up here, but I wish we could speak more on this. Thank you so much for joining us, Jake Epelle, founder and Chief Executive Officer, TAP Foundation, and also TAD Africa. Apologies for that. And also Honorable Minister Nentawe Yilwatda, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management. We appreciate you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Please give my love to Kayode, your managing director.
I will definitely do that. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.